19-3 loss to the Jaguars, continuing a downward trend for the Jets, who started off the year well. Still have some thoughts about getting to the postseason. New York needs to win out of the final 2 weeks and then have the Patriots drop one of its 2 remaining games, and you see the splits there. Now, record-wise, Zach Wilson will have the advantage, but as we've seen both on the field, the locker room, and the numbers there, Mike White, the preferred choice for Robert Saleh down the stretch. All right, let's check in with our insider, Josina Anderson. Josina, what more can you tell us about the news that Mike White is going to be able to play? And boy, the Jets do certainly need him at this point in time.
Well, I can tell you, I know that the Jets felt a lot of exuberance after the Packers were able to beat the Dolphins last night, helping their chances to just stay in this thing and potentially make the playoffs. And so, you know, the key after that, particularly when you're looking at the way that Zach Wilson played in his last game, was to figure out what were the results of the scans for Mike White. And for, according to reports, for that to come in today and for him to be cleared for contact, there was never any question that if Mike White was healthy, that he was going to start. I mean, you're just looking at the way that this team performs when they have Mike White as the starter. I mean, compared to Zach Wilson, his completion percentage over the time that he started has been 62 compared to Zach White, which is 54. The touchdown interception ratio, 6-7 for Zach Wilson, 3-2 for Mike White. And the passer rating, 85.8 for Mike White and about 72.8 for Zach Wilson. Not to mention the fact that he obviously not only is playing with way more confidence, which was very evident in that game against the Jaguars Thursday Night Football, but also has the trust of his locker room. And so all those things considered, I mean, there was really just no way that this was not going to be the case. And I think we heard the reports during Thursday Night Football about how many doctors Mike White was seeking opinion from just to find somebody to give him clearance, because he basically was doing anything to not have to miss that pass game against the Jaguars. So my feeling here, just from, you know, being an insider and being around football long enough and hearing Mike White speak and knowing the situation that the Jets were in, if he was going to be even 1% above the threshold needed to be for the doctors to give him clearance, that was going to be the case. I think the question now really for Mike White is just the pain tolerance and obviously just mitigating the risk of any further damage. Usually in this situation, when you have a fracture to the ribs, they do give you what's called an intercostal nerve block to just mitigate the pain that helps you to play. But as we know, the pain really is there to be a signal for any of us to not incur further damage. So the hope is here, not only that he can sustain throughout the entire game, but that he doesn't incur further damage to the area.
Josina, I know you spent a lot of time with the Jets. What about Zach Wilson? I know, he's come in a tough situation on Thursday night. The fans booed him. He was then a healthy scratch for Chris Streveler, who came in and gave that offense a little bit of a boost, although it ended up being in a losing effort. This is a team that is ready to win now. He does have, at least verbally, the backing of his head coach, Robert Saleh, but it's tough because he's a former number 2 overall pick, and expectations for him were pretty high for this team.
Well, absolutely, but the situation is what it is. I mean, to look at a team on Thursday night and play almost emotionless the way that they did, particularly after Quinnen Williams gets that big, I believe it was a turnover right over that first series that the Jaguars had, and just kind of busting through the line of scrimmage. And for the Jets not to be able to convert that, I feel like instantly kind of took the energy out of the team. Then when you look at not only the way that the team was playing, but looking on the sidelines, even Robert Saleh, to me, he didn't seem himself coaching through the duration of that game. Now, in the subsequent reports, we have heard that their wide receivers coach, Miles Austin, is out indefinitely due to the allegations of him, betting on sports outside of football, and the fact that he wasn't coaching in that game. Now it makes sense based on some of the things that I was seeing during that game, which weren't characteristic of the Jets. So it makes sense that the head coach, if he was going to get those results for Mike White today, to want to let the team know today and not let it string out to Wednesday, which is the typical installation day for most teams, and to wait to tell the media, because Right now, they're just trying to get from under the Miles Austin headline, get from under thinking that their playoff hopes were far-fetched, and to just energize this team instantly with hope, because that is what they will need when they travel to Seattle and play the Seahawks and play a quarterback, no less, that used to be a member of the Jets, that has the opportunity to take them out of their postseason drive.
Let's go to that quarterback situation to a few others, and we'll go to Philly, which played that exciting game in Dallas against the Cowboys. Jalen Hurts dealing with that injury to his throwing shoulder. Gardner Minshew came in, did play well, but couldn't get him over the hump on that final drive of the game. What are you hearing about Jalen Hurts and the shoulder, and what Nick Sirianni might do at that position?
So the report is that, and let me just check my phone here really quickly. I'm sorry, nothing has come through that is of consequence. So the report is that Jalen Hurts has a sternoclavicular sprain to that joint, the SC joint. And basically what that is doing is attaching the clavicle to the breastbone and also gives support to the shoulder. And so that is what he reportedly is dealing with. And due to the fact that the Cowboys beat the Eagles 40-34, it remains right now up in the air who is going to clinch that #1 seed in the NFC East. And also if they can get a first round bye and if they can still get home field advantage. So this is why you can see why Nick Sirianni said in post-game, quote, if Jalen is ready to go, he will play. The question really now is, should he? And so right now, I think that starts with what is the degree of the injury to the SC sprain in the shoulder, grade 1 through 3? Well, obviously it's not a grade 3 because then he wouldn't even be in question to play this Sunday against the Saints. So is it grade 1 or is it grade 2? And I think the fact that you're looking at Jalen Hurts not going to the locker room after incurring that injury with 1:13 left to go in the third quarter and playing through it gives you some sort of indication. You could look at it that way, or you could look at it in the sense that maybe it's closer to a grade 2 with the sense that he missed the game against Dallas and has to push through in order to make this game. Now, I did talk to Dr. David Chow, obviously, who used to work for the Chargers and known as Pro Football Doc on Twitter. And he did mention to me that the fact that the SC sprain is not necessarily a common injury, but one thing you can look to as far as giving you optimism is that the ligaments in that area are thick. So if you're going through normal football movements, it should not incur a risk of re-injury. However, if you do fall into a similar, if you fall in a similar way with similar force, yes, there is a risk of re-injury. So the question now for the Eagles is it worth it? And when you look at the fact that they're the #1 seed with a 13-2 record, and the Cowboys are currently sitting in 5th with an 11-4, if the Eagles lose the last two and the Cowboys win both, there is a chance that they could fall into that 5th spot. Not likely, but there is a possibility. And then you're looking at the fact that the Eagles played the Giants in that last game, and that the Giants are still very motivated to play very well. You can see why the pressure is on Jalen Hurts. But the one thing I would say is kind of a final note to this topic is overall, you still have to look at the big picture. And even though it is not likely for him to make it worse, it is still a game of a collision. It is still a contact sport, and something could happen. So at the end of the day, is the playoff seed, more important to you, or the belief that the team has in itself, no matter who they are playing, that they could still prevail in the postseason? And that is the decision ahead for Nick Sirianni, although they've already indicated that they're leaning towards him playing. Hopefully it bears out in terms of, all working well for them and nothing worse happening.
So let's go from Jalen Hurts' shoulder to Lamar Jackson's knee, Josina. Obviously the Ravens in a playoff spot, but still trailing the Bengals in the division with maybe hopes of catching them there. What's the latest in terms of Lamar Jackson and his timetable?
So Lamar Jackson suffered that PCL sprain week 13 versus the Broncos. And when you suffer a PCL sprain, assuming that it's not a grade 3, it typically can be a 2 to 4 week injury. Now, this week right now puts them at the 4th week. And so this is what we're keeping an eye on. Now, after the last game that the Ravens did play, there was a report out there that John Harbaugh would be keeping his eye on kind of their their standings for the playoffs and things like that. He basically emphasized, quote, that players will play when they are healthy, but also emphasized that he's not really thinking about the playoff seeding. So right now it's really kind of just about how Lamar feels, number one, as he kind of ramps things up to test out the PCL and just going through further testing and making sure that he is where they think that he is. Now, the other thing is, what do they really need to do when you think about kind of the playoff seeding? Of course, Lamar Jackson is a 2019 MVP and a two-time Pro Bowler. But the fact of the matter is that the Bengals right now are ahead of them in the division at 11-4. The Ravens are 10-5. And so theoretically, they could be temporarily ahead if they were to win this weekend and the Bengals were to lose. But you're also going into a situation where the two teams play in week 18. It could potentially be playing for the division. And so, yes, you're in a situation where you could get worse in your playoff seeding, or you could potentially be as high as number 3. But I think the same situation faces John Harbaugh that faces Nick Sirianni in terms of the question, how much do you believe in yourself as a team, and how important is that seeding to you in terms of feeling like you need it in order to advance? Now, one thing to keep in mind is that Mr. Huntley here, Tyler Huntley, is 2-1 as a starter, and one of the teams that he did beat was the Steelers. Now, he did not have a touchdown in that game and only has 1 touchdown and 1 interception in the last 3 games, but he has proven to be a formidable backup for Lamar, so that is something else to consider. And the last thing to consider for Lamar Jackson is just the contract situation. Now, we know that he did not accept the contract extension from the Ravens. He's playing the last year of his rookie deal, and he's going into 2023 without that protection, though obviously the Ravens could, elect to, do a tag, and we'll see how that would play out. But it's just another thing for Lamar to also keep in his head as far as his macro path for what he's looking to do. And the last we talked about that was just him thinking that he was deserving of a contract with way more guarantees than what was offered from the Baltimore Ravens.
Steelers and Ravens will be the Sunday night game, so John Harbaugh have a little bit of extra time. And you mentioned both John Harbaugh and Nick Sirianni just trying to figure out when to bring back their guy. Josina, for Ron Rivera, he's still trying to figure out who that guy is, whether it's Taylor Heineke or Carson Wentz. At least we saw that play out in the San Francisco game where Heineke had 2 turnovers and 3 drives, and then Carson Wentz came in and was able to get them into the end zone. Are we any closer to figuring out what the starting quarterback situation is going to be for Washington, holding that 7th spot at the moment?
Yeah, so a league source told me within the last couple of hours that right now that Ron Rivera has given his team today off. They have a team meeting at 1 p.m. on Tuesday. Typically, that would be the day off for the players. They have a half day on Tuesday. So it is possible that Ron Rivera could deliver the news to either Heineke or Carson Wentz about who is starting before that meeting or going into that. Now, the other question would be is whether that information would become public. Obviously, it's going to happen before Wednesday because they need to know that's normal installation day, as I mentioned before. So we will keep our eye on Tuesday and see not only if Ron Rivera tells both quarterbacks, but if it comes out. But you understand kind of the reason for this kind of quandary here. While Taylor Heineke is 5-3-1 as a starter, and they were tied 7-7 at the half of that game against the 49ers, there were 2 crucial turnovers that happened right before he was benched that caused the switch to Carson Wentz. Now, Carson Wentz did come in. He was 12 for 16 for 123 with 1 touchdown, and definitely gave Ron Rivera some food for thought. But at the end of the day, before Taylor Heineke came in, he did lose that position to Taylor Heineke, mainly based off the way that Heineke was playing when Carson Wentz suffered that broken pinky. And that's what made Heineke be able to kind of just stay in there even after Carson Wentz got healthy. One other thing that Ron Rivera said after that game was that he was not going to make a knee-jerk decision. So something to keep in mind here is that he is going to put considerable attention to the entire body of work for Taylor Heineke before making this decision. And then on the other hand, another thing to keep in mind for Carson Wentz is though he did play well in relief of Taylor Heineke, one of the things that has been kind of dogging Carson Wentz is his play when he's under pressure versus when he is not so much as expected to perform. And when he came in on Sunday, he was behind and was able to play well, kind of in relief when he's not necessarily expected to be the hero. But if you look at his past with the Eagles and with the Colts as well, when he's been in the situation where he's expected to perform, those have been the situations and when his play has kind of deteriorated and fallen apart. So this is why this is a big consequential decision for the Commanders, because they are still in the NFC picture for the playoffs.
Great stuff as always. Thank you, Josina.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.